All rise.
Sorry. You're not going to stand in it, right? No, I plan to sit back down.
Jesse and Lisa, can you come up? At least for now, so you can make sure you are senior. Here. Wow, I've never seen our conference room so busy and lively. I love it. It's beautiful. Thank you all for being here. My name is Michelle Merriweather. I have the privilege of serving as President and CEO of the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. It is with great honor that I welcome you to our home to talk about this important effort. But first, I have to share with you that what the Urban League is, because many of you are probably asking. The Urban League nationally was started 108 years ago. Locally, 89 years ago. We're almost 90 years old. And our mission is to simply create economic parity for African Americans and other underserved communities through housing, education, and workforce development, which is very important to why we are here today, and probably why we selected this location for this important effort. It is detrimental that we repeal I-200, and I-1000 is an important step in allowing the people's voice to be heard in eradicating and repealing I-200. In that, we have a historic moment happening today with three wonderful governors represented together jointly.
Yes.
They're saying too that it is time. That it is time. Before I introduce our very special guest, I have to say thank you and welcome to our wonderful, illustrious leader, the chair of our board, Lisa Mannion, who serves as the chief of staff in the prosecutor's office. And we certainly wouldn't be here today without the support of Jesse Weinberry. So thank you, sir. I wanted to make sure that I did introductions of our illustrious leaders justice. I'm making it brief because they're the important part. And so I'm just going to run through this really quickly. We have the grandfather of affirmative action in Washington, the great state of Washington. The longest serving governor, Governor Bob Evans. Thank you for joining us. Daniel Evans. Thank you for joining us and lending your voice to this important effort. I feel like I've been following Governor Locke around all week. He is the first Chinese American governor in U.S. history, and then followed my favorite president, and who picked him to serve as the Secretary of Commerce and subsequently as the 10th ambassador to China, and yes, history maker and leader. And we have another history maker, the second woman governor in the U.S. in the Washington State history, a lawyer, brilliant woman, and cancer survivor. We are so grateful for you. She's currently the CEO of Challenge Seattle and the chair of Fred Hutch, who's another organization doing very important work. And with that, I would like to turn it over to the governors for comment, or would you like to?
Governors each have a statement.
Governors each have a statement.
I'm very proud to join Governors Gregoire and Locke in what I think is precisely the right kind of step to take. Initiatives are one thing. Initiatives to a legislature are the right, appropriate way to go, I think, because you present to the legislature the voice of the people, and the legislature has a chance to adopt, change, or pass it along to the people for a vote. So we bring the legislature into it, and why? Because I've seen over the last 20 years the results of I-200. It has made the job of equal opportunity and equal chances for people much more difficult. I am particularly involved with the University of Washington, and there have been many people who have stepped forward voluntarily to help ease the pain of Initiative 200, but that's no substitute. No matter how well they do, the volunteer efforts of people doesn't substitute for good law. And we need good law to provide the basis for equal opportunity for everyone. That's why I'm an enthusiastic supporter of I-1000. And I suspect that when the signatures are gathered, the legislature also will respond favorably.
Well, I want to thank Michelle and Lisa of the Urban League for hosting us. I have to make a comment. When I was in college, I was actually working on the renovation of this building. Later on, when I was with the Seattle Human Rights Department, we were housed here, and so it's great to be back here in a great institution that has really served as a pillar of the community in terms of change and inclusion and justice. I very much support Initiative 1000 because I think it's important that we have a society that really reflects our population, in which we have a government where the faces of government and the people of government reflect the population in which they serve, as well as educational institutions that have a diversity of faculty and students to have a more robust educational experience for all. And we know that how important education is to moving people out of poverty and changing lives forever. So it's important that we have greater opportunities in our higher education system so that people of color and veterans and women can really move up get a profession and have a better livelihood and a better future for themselves and their families. I want to make it clear that Initiative 1000 is not repealing Initiative 200, but we're simply making it clear that affirmative action, outreach, targeted outreach to women, minority groups, and veterans and disabled is allowed. And that we will benefit from that. I think there's been a lot of confusion and reluctance after the passage of Initiative 200 that somehow outreach efforts, targeted outreach efforts were not allowed. And so that's been a chilling effect, whether in government or whether in our educational institutions. And so we're not calling for any quotas. There will be no quotas. There will be no preferences. But simply targeted outreach toward targeted groups under Initiative 1000, which would be women, veterans, disabled, and people of color. I can tell you that I was a beneficiary of affirmative action in going to Yale University. Yale was looking for students from the public schools. They were looking for students from the West Coast, and they were looking for people of color. But I still had to pass the same exams. I still had to meet all the qualifications that other students were judged against. And I don't think people of color and other targeted groups want to somehow believe that they got in on a free pass, or that somehow they're less qualified. I mean, we all have pride in ourselves, but we simply want a chance.
Right.
We simply want a chance. And that's what Initiative 1000 will do. Make it very, very clear that affirmative action outreach, targeted outreach to groups that sometimes are not considered or passed over is specifically allowed. But there will be no quotas, no set-asides, no preferences. In fact, for instance, with government contracting, still the low bidder will get the contract. But we want to make sure that in the state of Washington, for instance, under state programs or city contracts and city jobs, that there's outreach, targeted outreach toward groups so that they can apply, so they can bid for this work. You're still going to have to pass the muster. Still going to have to meet the qualifications in order to earn either a job or get the government contract. But we need to make it clear and erase some of the ambiguity and the reluctance among government officials and government institutions to make it very clear that targeted outreach to these groups is permissible. That's what Initiative 1000 does. That's why I'm strongly in support of it.
I joined my colleagues today for two reasons, and I don't want to be repetitive, but I couldn't agree with them more. First, I-1000 represents the values of the people of the great state of Washington. And number two, as the most trade-dependent state, and with a major international city, that being Seattle, we absolutely have to have a diverse workforce. We have and will continue to have an increasingly diverse state. That's good. That is good. We're better for it. Our values are that of inclusion, diversity, and equity. That's why each of us is here today, to support that message so that everybody knows and understands that those are the values of the people of this great state. We want to make sure that every single kid in Washington State understands, male, female, ultimately a veteran, disabled, that they get a chance, that they can have a successful life. And I-1000 is there to make it possible for them. Because these are our values, we need to make sure that we send that message not only throughout our state, but throughout the entire nation. Second, because we are the most trade dependent, and because we are doing business literally around the world, employers in our state need and want and must have a diverse workforce. We export agriculture to airplanes. We do personal retail sales to connecting the world through technology. In doing so, we have to have a diverse workforce. We're innovating every day. We are solving some of the biggest problems right here in our own backyard and some of the biggest problems in the world. And therefore, we need a diverse workforce. We're the home of startups, building tomorrow literally and figuratively, and we can do only successfully with a diverse workforce. Those are our strengths as a state, but we can be stronger with those strengths through I-1000. As President Anamari Kause of the University of Washington says, we need to be able to recruit the best diverse faculty and enroll those strongest students from underrepresented backgrounds to support our employers and to make sure those students are successful in their own right. That's who we are. We need to remedy discrimination. We need to provide every resident with the tools to compete for the best jobs and have successful lives. So today, we have some asks of you. First, we ask you to sign the initiative, I-1000. Second, we ask you, go out there, tell your neighbors, your family, your friends, sign I-1000. And just a little PS, vote on November 6th.
Before I open it to questions of our esteemed guests, I have to acknowledge we have two very important people in the room. The initial sponsor of I-1000, Mr. Nate Jackson. Jack Jackson. Little birdie told me you were part of Governor Evans' team that wrote the first legislation. Executive order. So thank you very much for your service.
But Governor Evans deserves most of the credit.
That's what good staff always
That's
say.
good. Exactly. And I also want to recognize Senator Marilyn Chase of the 32nd District, sponsor of repeal of I-1000. Thank you so much. And now I would like to open the floor for questions from the press.
Well, since nobody else is going to speak, I'll start. I actually spoke to the man who wrote, or partially wrote I-200 today, and
Please give your name and
I'm
identify
sorry,
who
my
you're
apologies.
representing.
I'm Ryan Harris with Como Radio. The man who wrote I-200, Ward Connerly, and he calls affirmative action simply a shift of discrimination back to government. Curious how you would respond to that argument.
Well, let me just say that what all Initiative 1000 does is to make it clear that targeted outreach efforts of recruitment to groups that sometimes are overlooked, whether it's women, disabled, veterans, and people of color, is permissible.
Thank you, Governor.
Are there any other questions from the press? Jeff, do you have any?
Any questions?
Any words?
No, I'm almost ready to adjourn.
All right.
No.
Here. Oh,
We can have more fun than that.
But if there are no more questions
Here,
from
wait.
the press.
All right, wait.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, they got a sign.
You saw it.
There we go.
That's good. Are you registered to vote? Only registered voters can sign, I'm just saying.
We can, while they're signing, we can certainly take one or two questions from public. Yeah.
I'll wait till they.
Okay.
This could take a minute.
Yes, it could. Well,
You don't have to give your age, do you?
Yes.
They're asking for your birthday.
Birthday.
Yeah, just sign all the things.
This is a lot of pressure.
there we go.
There we go.
Just pretend it's another
Hiding
bill
the
signing.
birthday.
Except you get 3 governors signing it at the same time.
So by the way, on October 16
Yes.
is Daniel J. Evans'
Oh.
birthday.
Oh,
Yay! So how about a round of happy birthday? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Governor Evans. Happy birthday to you.
Hold on a minute, we do the Stevie Wonder version. Happy birthday to you.
A long time.
You want the blues version, Governor?
are you all on for questions from the public? No, there are no questions from the public at this time. Perhaps you can catch them on the way out. I think.
Can I ask you a question? Can I get
One question, okay.
Well, I would ask the governor this. Sam Smith was my uncle and he was for affirmative action. And so you guys are saying that you're advertising to target people. Are the numbers gonna show that what we're targeting is gonna make a difference? Because advertisement is like contractors, for instance. All contractors, black, white, yellow, and different, see the contractors, that's a kind of recruitment deal, right? So how can we make a difference with this I-1000?
Well, we know that recruitment and outreach does make a difference. For instance, with respect to highway programs and federal contracts, where the government specifically calls out for affirmative action, which is simply targeting and outreach, the amount of dollars and the percentage of contract dollars going to minority firms and women firms is substantially higher than the percentage of dollars and contracts going to women and minority groups in state contracts where there has been no outreach and targeting. But even under the federal program, low bidder wins. There is no set aside, no preference, no special points for being a women or minority business. And so that's all we're calling for at the state program, making sure that it's known by the government officials, whether it's local government, state government, that targeted outreach, recruitment, exposure is clearly permissible. or state programs.
Governor Locke, thank you for that response. Thank you for the answer. I'm a fan of yours, and I celebrate you being the first Chinese American governor in the country, and under the Obama administration. You're wonderful.
Thank you very much.
At this point, I'm gonna hand the floor over to Jesse Warren Berry, and he will acknowledge our endorsers.
Yes, it is important to give credit to the people who built the bridges that I-100 is crossing. One of the first organizations, I'm sorry, I-1000 is crossing. One of the first organizations to lead the effort to change the laws for the better, to make the I-200 more just, is Tabor 100. And those of you who don't know Tabor 100, they are a business organization started by Langston Tabor, who was a businessman and contractor. When I-200 was passed, he started the organization for the strict purpose of turning an unjust law into a just law. And that's what's happening today. The president of Tabor is Ali Garrett, who has been president and CEO for the last decade, and she has been the one at the helm leading the effort, and I want to recognize her. She's standing right there.
There you go.
She's up
Hey.
Ali has flown all the way from Mississippi to be here, and so I want to give her an opportunity to ask a question.
I wasn't
Put her on the spot.
put me on the spot. Yes, I flew in. I was down in New York. I was at our game. I heard me talk about I have my brother in Mississippi with cancer, so I've been going back and forth. But I just want to not ask a question. I just want to acknowledge how excited I am to see all three of you supporting this effort. I know the support that we did have, especially Governor Gregoire, when you were governor, and some of the executive orders and things that I worked with you on that you put in place. But as you know, those things didn't make a difference at all. And no matter how many executive orders or intent, if something is not more substantial, like removing I-200, we're not going to see a difference. So I really just wanted to say that I appreciate you three coming together to support this effort, and let's get this done.
Get it done.
Thank you.
I would like to ask a question. Initiatives are extraordinarily difficult.
Until you recognize. I'm going to get to you.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yes, we also have Louise Chernin. Greater Seattle Business Association has also endorsed I-1000. And Louise, thank you for your leadership in that organization. They actually had a face-to-face candidates meeting yesterday. I was honored to be invited to give remarks about I-1000, and so I want to give you a chance to either make a comment or to ask a question of our honorary co-chairs. And while she's coming in that direction, Tim, I will get to you. I am duty bound to make sure everybody who is here, who has made this possible, get recognized first, and then I will get to you.
Well, thank you. Yes, I am Louise Chernin. I'm with GSBA. We are the LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. We are the largest in North America with 1,400 businesses. And we have always, I remember when I-200 was passed. I think it was a dark day in our city. And I think all of us who are committed to equality, diversity, equity, and inclusion see today that we're finally going to bring some light here and start getting information. Governor Locke, as you said, it is about awareness and education and information. People don't apply for things that they don't know anybody means them when they say you should be included. And so I'm honored to be part of this coalition. I remember when Jesse was our legislator in State District 43. So we are honored to be part of this. We look forward to collecting signatures everywhere we go. And you do have the full support of the LGBTQ community to say this is very important. And so we're proud to be here today.
Thank you. Next is Reverend Paul Benz. Reverend Paul Benz is head of an organization, statewide organization, known as the Faith Action Network. Hundreds of churches around the state of Washington that has endorsed I-1000, and I want to welcome him and give him an opportunity also to say a few words to the governors, and also if you have a question, please ask him.
Thank you, Jesse. It's an honor to be here at the press conference. When Jesse mentioned this to me in our weekly organizing conversations that the 3 former governors were going to be endorsing this, it was like, wow, what a great celebration, what a great honor to be in the same room as each of you. Thank you each for the tremendous work you've done to advance our state. And thank you for supporting and endorsing an initiative that is going to continue to advance our state for all people. The faith community really stands with particularly communities of color that feel, to use the civil rights image, and thinking of seeing the picture of Dr. King here in this room and knowing the Urban League. The bus image, I guess, is what I'm going to. And so many feel that they are still in the back of the bus. And that we feel with this initiative, not only will men and women of color be driving the bus, owning the bus, paving the highways, so all that aspects of education, employment, and jobs and contracts is so important. So Faith Action Network is working on this all around the state. Faith leaders are going to stand up and say, support this, and take it to the legislature, and we will be working with the legislative leadership to see if they can pass this in the first week of the legislature.
Next is Jackie Jones-Walsh. Jackie Jones-Walsh is on the board of the Washington Federation of State Employees. They just last weekend convened their statewide convention and voted unanimously. This is for a union of over 46,000 people across the state that work for state, county, municipal governments. They voted unanimously to endorse I-1000. Ms. Jackie Jones-Walsh, please share with us.
Well, thank you, Jesse. All I want to say is it's been a long time coming. It's been 20 years. I worked on it when it first overturned, when it passed I-200, we worked on it vigorously. And the language, people didn't understand the language when it was passed. So now I'm excited about I-1000. It's going to pass. Glad to see Gary Locke here and Christine Gregoire and Governor Evans. I mean, really, what more can you ask for?
Before I go to Tim, are there any other people here from organizations that have endorsed I-1000? I want to give you your due, your credit. I don't see any other hands, so now the show is about to begin. For those of you who don't know Tim Eyman, I'll give you a quick introduction. He is one of the 2 or 3 people who brought I-200 into law in 1998. So as I said to a smaller group earlier, if you're still looking for work, if you are still trying to get a college education, or if you have a business and you're still trying to compete and win a contract, the man you have to thank is Tim Eyman. So you've been asking for a question. You have 10 seconds.
Yeah, there you go. Well, thank you very much. I think this is really a model of civility that I think a lot of people can take a lot of encouragement by. People could not have been more gracious to me the entire time we've been here. Jesse and I talk quite often on the phone and have a very good relationship. It's a very controversial topic that brings out a lot of emotions, and I think today is a testament to the class that you guys are bringing to this. I'm not going to get into the debate over the merits of the thing. Obviously, I'm opposed to the initiative, but I want to talk about just the meat and potatoes of initiatives. Initiatives are extraordinarily difficult to do. You have 2.5 months to get 350,000 people to sign a petition that you all feel very, very passionately about. And I'm unavailable to help you in that effort, but I'm just saying that it's an extraordinarily difficult process, and it requires a tremendous amount of money. My estimate would be you have to raise close to $3.5 to $4 million in the next 2.5 months and spend money hiring people that are going to go out and collect signatures. And so I just want to ask the obvious question is, does the effort behind this, which is a tremendous grassroots support, and it's a very positive thing that you have this much grassroots support, But in this day and age, it is extraordinarily difficult to get an initiative qualified without raising a tremendous amount of money. The carbon tax initiative spent like $5 million. The gun initiative spent like close to $6 million. I mean, it's a tremendously expensive process. And I would just throw it open to you: are the three governors going to help you raise money for this? Is Governor Inslee going to help you raise money for this? $3.5 million in an extraordinarily short period of time is going to, even for an idea that you all believe in and you think voters are willing to sign it, it takes a tremendous amount of money. And I would just express my desire for you to comment on the financial challenges that you will face. So thank you for the opportunity to weigh in on that important topic.
Well, let me first say that, there was an initiative passed some years ago that gathered the most signatures in history. Didn't cost anything. And it took 3 weeks. When the legislature passed in the middle of the night an increase in their own salaries, people rose up. So it doesn't necessarily take millions of dollars. It takes a good issue, which I believe this one is. It takes dedicated people, and I think that this will succeed and be presented to the legislature in January for their action.
And the only thing I would add to that is, I don't expect this to fail, but if we don't get enough signatures, I do expect the legislature, and the senator here today says a lot, to take it up on their own. They got close to it last year. Time for them to act, with or without us, but we want to have their back. That's what we're doing this for, and I agree with Dan. Grassroots, we can get her done.
That's right. We have so many organizations that have endorsed this, and with their own network of people and supporters and members, that's how we're going to really circulate the petitions and get them signed. We'll be using social media and the internet to make people aware of the petition so they can get copies of it. And so we're really going to be relying on grassroots, and plus the enormous network of members behind all the organizations that have endorsed this.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Jesse.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm delighted with the support of my attorney on 2 days ago. We defeated you in court, Tim.
Yes, yes. Handily,
But
handily.
I can't be more proud, because keep in mind where we're coming from is a time when Washington State had a big zero contracts with minority and women business for the entire duration of territorial governorship, right through governorship. And I think I was 29 when Dan appointed me to his staff years ago. And I was there at a time when that number was 0. And I can't venture to tell you how painful that is. I also was the person who took that executive order in before Dan left office, the first historic executive order that set a goal of 10% participation for women and 4% for 10% minorities, 4% for women. And the governor led off signing that, but it was not until he had worked many years of his 3 terms to try and create equality. And the employees, the state employees, had done the work on that, and it got to him just before he left office. And reluctantly, based on the timing, because it was pretty late, we were about to leave office, but the governor did set the precedence. And when Governor Spellman came in and signed the next executive order, his first word at the table was, "Is there a precedence for this?" And I had carried Governor Evans' executive order for 4 years in my briefcase. And so we got that done. Now we will get this done. Let me tell you, we will indeed get this done. And we're going to need money. And Tim, you can help raise money for us. So we're going to get it done. And I'm absolutely delighted and absolutely ecstatic to have been a little black boy that grew up on a white man's plantation 15 years of my life in the South picking cotton and exposed to Agent Orange. And now I stand here with some of the greatest governors in the state.
Oh, wow.
I want to give an opportunity for Senator Chase to respond to the handoff that the governor gave to the legislature. If are there any other legislators here with us? So, Senator Chase, I think that you've already been introduced, so we know who you are. I'll just add one thing. She was the one who was the chief sponsor of the legislation, I believe it's Senate Bill 6406 this past session, to overturn I-200. And so to the question of if for some reason we do not get all of the signatures, what are you prepared to do? There you go.
Well, I just happen to have in my briefcase the text of the bill, which is our safety net. And if we do not get sufficient signatures, which I believe we can, we will go forth with a regular piece of legislation. But and I will say that it is identical to Initiative 1000.
All right.
So, yeah, nice. It's very good. And I also want to say I'm extremely honored to have the three of you here today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very honored.
And now I will just ask you to go to your calculators, because I believe in something called DNA, and that is not what makes up our physiology. It is my code word for doubt never again. So I know that Tim came here to create some doubt. He just basically said, you guys can't afford this, all right? But I also, without knowing that he was going to say that, I let you know that just one organization represents over 40,000 people. Okay? All right. Siri always does that.
And there they are.
There's one organization with 40,000 people. Y'all ever heard of email?
Yeah.
What is that?
So we're going to be using grassroots technology. An email to 40,000 people telling them to complete one sheet. There's only 20 names on a sheet. It's not going to get responded to by all 40,000, but let's cut it in half, 20,000. You guys got your calculators ready? All right. I know Tim has his. So don't let Tim be the only one that adds this up, because this is the pathway to your victory. 20,000 of those employees that have already endorsed I-1000 get an email with one of these attached to it. One of these, let me have the petition, what the heck I'm talking about. One of these attached to it. Got 20 spaces to put a signature. And we tell people before Thanksgiving, take this to your Thanksgiving gatherings and get your family and friends to sign just one sheet. Okay, 20,000 times 20 signatures is how much?
400,000.
Isn't that something? How many do we need?
350.
We need 300,000, and if people just go and get one sheet, 20,000, and turn it in, you got 400,000? Well, I wonder how they're going to turn it in. Somebody on our campaign was smart enough to create one of the first petitions that has postage prepaid. Yeah. They don't even have to buy a stamp. Just put it in the mail. So Tim, if they don't have to pay for postage, and since we're not printing all these, we're sending them via email, we don't have to pay for printing. Where's your you spent $4 million on yours. Where's that money really going? Good shot. Because you could be doing this too.
There you go.
Right?
There you go.